welcome back to Guided Souls. I am your host, Katie, otherwise known as Guided Soul Katie on TikTok, and I'm so excited to be back here for another week with you guys. This week, I got to sit down with my new friend, Kara Daniels. You may know her as at deep.root.connections on both TikTok and Instagram. And Kara can communicate with trees, animals, the land, nature spirits. And when I came across her videos on TikTok for the first time, I was just so mesmerized by her gifts, and I knew that I needed to know more. Kara offers animal communication sessions, land and home clearing, and she has a new course coming up, Intro to Animal Communication. She's now enrolling for that, which will, I believe, start next month. And then she also does monthly land healing on the third Saturday of each month. So that is coming up this Saturday, and I'm going to be joining. You can use the link in the show notes to check out Kara's website, and maybe I'll see you there. And the monthly land healing is free, and it's online over Zoom. So very accessible. It was just such a privilege to be able to sit down with Kara and really pick her brain about so many different things. So I hope you enjoy listening to our conversation as much as I enjoyed having it. Kara, thank you so much for being here and welcome to the pod.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited.
I'm so excited to have you here. I've been like really itching to talk to you and ask you all the things. But before I dive in, do you want to just take a moment to introduce yourself and some of the work that you do?
Yes, of course. So I'm Kara Daniels. I struggle with identifying myself with a certain title because I do a lot of different things, most of which includes interspecies communication. So not only can I communicate with animals, I can communicate with nature, including trees and the spirits of the land and the elementals. And that's generally my main focus is just sharing the messages of nature, of the animals, of Gaia, and teaching people how to do it as well. So that's kind of me in a nutshell.
So cool. I love that. And I totally relate to not being able to label what I do. And we were talking right before I hit record, but I'm so fascinated by the work that you do, and I also know so little about it. So, feel free to guide me if I ask a question and you want to take it in a different direction. I think that's part of what is making me so excited to speak to you is I truly have very little context for the work that you do. But I kind of, I guess, started waking up to the fact that, you know, Earth is very much a living being with a soul, and that everything on Earth, all of the plants and the trees and the soil beneath our feet, like they all have, I don't know if a soul is what you would call it, but like these abilities to connect with us, and they help us and they give us healing. And it just kind of opened my eyes in a way that I had never experienced before. And then I came across one of your videos. So, how would you explain, like, do these places have souls, or how would you describe that?
Ew, that's a really good question. Is it a soul? Is a spirit? Is it a spirit? Is it an essence? It's really hard to kind of just pinpoint or even, I'm again with the labels, I think labeling is really hard and kind of keeps everything kind of in a container that it might not belong in. But what I found is like much like you and I, at least in my belief system, is that we all have our own soul. So when we die, our consciousness, our soul goes elsewhere. And I think with animals and trees, it's the same thing. You can call them a soul, an indwelling spirit, a being within, whatever label you want, but there is a consciousness residing within all of nature, within the earth, and even water has its own consciousness. So I don't really know how I want to label it, but the way that I communicate with all of these different beings is as an individual. So just to kind of give you an example, when I'm connecting in with a dog, they're very much their own unique being. Same thing with a tree. They're their own unique being. And when we kind of look at the larger landscape, there are spirits within the water that are their own unique individuals. So that's kind of how I look at it, is that everything has their own unique essence, being, soul, spirit, whatever you want to call it. It's all the same in my mind. But yeah, absolutely everything has that within.
Oh, cool. I love that. That's such a great description of it. And when did you first realize that you could communicate with plants and animals and trees?
Yeah. Well, it started with animals about 5 years ago or so. I kind of just got myself stuck in a rut in my career path, and I thought, this isn't working. What am I supposed to be doing? Kind of just like threw my hands up and gave up and said, universe, help. And so after I did that, about 2 weeks later, the stray cat came into my life. And it's like this whole story. She started talking to me, and I thought, oh my gosh, cats can talk. I knew it. I had used animal communicators in the past. So for me, it was like, I just didn't know I could do it. And so she kind of got that ball rolling for me. I started taking workshops, studying the mind and energy, and I just literally dove headfirst into this black hole of spirituality, animal communication, and just kind of devoured everything I could to kind of get an understanding. And it was just like one thing led to another. Once I got really comfortable communicating with animals, I actually opened up my own business to share the stories of people's companion animals with them, because for me it was life changing. And I was like, oh my gosh, if I could share the messages with their people, just think about how the world could change. And so I started working with the animals and several clients. And after about a year, kind of in that space, I kind of got stuck. I was like, is this it? I feel like there's more. I just don't know what it is. And so I took a step back, took myself on a walk, and I found this tree to sit under. And I had heard of people who could communicate with nature, and I thought, well, maybe I'll just give it a go, see what happens. And it was literally within a second of me thinking that this tree started to communicate with me, and he offered to be my guide. And ever since then, he's been one of my active guides, and he's been teaching me how to communicate with all of the other nature beings. So it was kind of just through a series of events that led me to where I am today. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's been a journey.
That's so cool that you almost had like an animal guide and a tree guide, you know, it was like one sort of being that chose you and was like, let me guide you in this path. I think that's really beautiful.
Yeah, that's exactly what happened too. And it definitely happened in phases, because I'm one of those people that's just like, it's not real until it happens to me. And so if a tree started talking to me first, there is no way I would have accepted that. I would have been like, yep, I've lost my mind. So it literally was just, I think it was very intentionally presented to me.
Yeah, absolutely. And when you talk about, you know, like having connecting people with their companion animals and delivering messages that way. I think I've started to see, I have two dogs, so I've started to see them differently and like the wisdom that they can pass on to me. You know, I can't necessarily communicate with them at this point, but it's kind of funny that I think we always see our animals as beings that aren't as smart as us. And we're like, you know, we do have to take care of them, but I don't know. It's very much like pet owner, you know? And so once you're like, oh, this being like has a soul and it has wisdom to share with me, like I have said to my dogs, like, if you have wisdom to share with me, I am open and ready to receive it. So far nothing has come through, but I just think that it's an interesting perspective shift to go from, oh, I'm teaching this animal to, oh, this animal is teaching me, you know?
Yeah, it really can shift your perspective and your relationship completely. I think that's like the coolest thing to witness is those clients that come in and they're like, I've never had an animal communication session before. And then after we close the session, their mind is blown. They're like, I had no idea how deep my animal was. And then it's
Yeah.
like a whole shift in the way that they connect and the relationship almost blossoms. It's just the coolest thing to see.
Yeah. Oh, that's incredible. And I think a lot of individuals in the spiritual space have different spiritual gifts. And I'm of the belief that anyone can really build their intuition. But is this something that everyone has access to, or is it like some individuals have this gift and others don't? And we kind of go through the people that have this gift.
I think, and from what I have experienced through teaching animal communication over the years, is that some people, I mean, everybody can do this. I will say that every single person has the ability to communicate with their animals. And you probably already are anyways. It's just a really fluid connection. So sometimes it's like, well, I'm not communicating with them, but I just kind of intuitively know this, this, and this. It's like, well, you are. So yes, I feel like everybody is already in that communicating space without really knowing it. But to take it up and really fine tune the skill, again, it's a lot of just practicing, practicing, practicing. Now, some people, especially because I have kind of two areas of expertise where it's nature and animals, I do find that there are people that lean more towards the animals and they just click into space. And it's a lot harder for them to work with nature. And then the nature people that kind of bridge over into the animal communication, they have a harder time tuning into the animals. So I think part of that is just like our own energy and our soul essence is more inclined to connect in with certain things. And that's most likely for a reason.
Mm.
So that's just kind of what I've noticed throughout the years is that, we all have our own fine skills and vibration that kind of links up with other things. But with practice, everybody can do any of this. So I
Yeah.
totally agree with what you said initially.
Okay, cool. Yeah, no,
Yeah.
I love that. And it's funny, so I've been on a couple walks and I feel like I haven't really gotten responses from my dogs at least yet, but maybe I am. But I have gotten very basic but also clear, just sort of one word or two word kind of messages from a tree and I'm almost like did I just make that up? But I set the intention of like, if anyone has anything to say, and then it just like is in my head. So, how do you know if a tree is communicating with you versus I just had this random thought in my head?
Yep. Setting your intention is really important, not necessary, but being in the present mind, being opened, or I'm sorry, I said that so wrong. Being present and being open-minded. It's really important. And just kind of setting that space of availability. When a tree is going to reach out to you, it's going to be lightning fast. And it sounds like that's what happened to you too. It's like, I'm available. And then all of a sudden there's a message. And it sounds to me like yours was through words, which is clairaudience. Usually, if you're hearing words from the trees, it's going to be, I mean, there's a lot of different ways that it can come in, but usually it's like a word or something that you wouldn't have normally thought of to begin with. Especially the tone, or I don't, it's hard to explain, like the tone, the texture, or the personality.
Mm.
Usually the words are infused with a different energy. And if you're paying attention, you're like, oh, that was kind of like a happier vibe than I was just feeling, or maybe it was more masculine or feminine. So usually there's a little bit more to the message than just a quick word that's kind of implanted in your mind, if you will. So, and sometimes for some people, they actually hear the voices of the trees, and some people will hear what feels like their own thought,
Mm.
which makes it a little bit more complicated to kind of decipher. But if it comes in and it's not something that you would have just thought of randomly, it's most likely from the tree, especially if it's of higher guidance or something productive and useful for you. They love to guide us and give us advice.
Yeah, yeah. No, that's really cool. I mean, I think it was in my voice, but it did have sort of a flair of a personality on it. So I'll just share it with you what they said if you want.
Sure.
So yeah, one is it happened on two different occasions. So one, I was just like, is one of them just like told me his name was Fred, like immediately. He's just like, I'm Fred. And I was like kind of thinking that was like kind of a funny name for a tree. And then I wondered how old like the trees were around me. And it was kind of it wasn't like a huge tree. It was like a little bit skinnier. And he said, um, I'm the same age that your dad would be right now. Which I haven't really done the math because my dad passed away a few years ago, but I was just like, wow, that's pretty cool. And then yesterday I was on a walk and another tree said, I'm Alfred. And I was like, another Fred? And he goes, it's a lot more common of a name than you'd think. And that one felt like a little bit almost sassy, you know? And so I was like, okay, I get it. And then one other one, and I don't even know if this is possible because we didn't talk about where we live. And I don't know if you've even been to the place where I live, but one of them just, it popped into my head is like, say hi to Kara. And I was just like, okay, I will do that, you know? So those are my limited experiences with trees, but I don't know. Hopefully they were actually the trees talking to me and not just my thoughts.
Oh my gosh, I love that. Say hi to Kara. Yeah, I'm beginning to be known with the tree community, I see. That's very
Yeah.
cool. I'll take that as a compliment.
Yeah. Yeah.
Even just the way that you're talking about these experiences, you're already feeling the texture of their essence, right?
Mhm.
One of them feels a little bit more serious, but they're both masculine, it sounds
Mhm.
like this is
Mhm.
who I am.
Yeah.
And the other one has sass. Yeah, they can be super sassy. They can be cranky. I think people just think trees are like these wise, old, ancient beings, but that's not necessarily true.
Yeah.
I have met some super sassy trees. So I do think that you are connecting in, especially because, I mean, would you randomly name a tree Fred?
No, absolutely
No.
not.
No. And part of that whole connection too is like if you're looking for something specific, like something grand like the seer or the guardian, they're actually going to play a game with you and flip it because you're going to be less likely to accept that. But Fred, you're like, oh, well, I wasn't going to name you that. Like that's not even something on my radar. So they actually do that because they can feel what you're thinking and sense. And so they'll kind of be like, well, how can I get through to you and make sure that you recognize what I'm trying to get across? So I
Yeah.
think that's really cool.
So cool. I love that.
Yeah.
And I've seen some of your videos where you ask a tree a specific question and then you kind of get this long download. So when you're having conversations with trees, is it mostly you just allowing them to say whatever is on their mind? Are you asking them specific questions or how does that work?
It depends. Usually I do have a specific question in mind just because I try to share their messages with the world. And so I usually kind of take the questions that come in through my social media outlets that people are asking me. I'm like, all right, trees, this is what we're talking about today. Let's answer the question. And that's how I've learned quite a bit actually. But it is more of a channel. I consider myself a conscious channel and I lean into automatic writing the most.
Mm.
And so I'll just kind of set my space up, set my intention, and then all of the information kind of just like flows through my hands. And sometimes they go so fast, I'm like, hold on, slow down. And so that's how I channel the longer messages and information.
Okay, awesome. And if someone is trying to connect with a tree or grow that skill, would you recommend that they ask questions or just kind of see what the tree wants to tell them?
I would say the first thing to do is find the right tree because not all trees are going to want to connect in. And so if you're just like walking outside and say, this is the tree I want to talk to, that tree might not even be interested. And so I think the first thing to just try is to set your intention and ask which tree wants to connect. And this really leans into intuitive connection, just paying attention to what's going on because they will call you in. It's almost like a magnetic pull. Or for people that kind of have more clairvoyance or can kind of see more, it's like the trees will actually kind of highlight themselves. And so those are the trees that you want to connect in with first because vibrationally, they're going to match you better than anybody else that's kind of around. And then they're interested in having a conversation. So that's the first go-to is find the right tree. Don't pick it, let them pick you. And then if you're brand new to communicating, like if you're not familiar with your intuitive abilities or your subtle senses, like your clairaudience, clairvoyance, any of that, I would just kind of do a little bit of back research on those. So you know, because all of the trees are going to be communicating with you through your senses. And I would just ask permission when I find a tree and then just sit and see what happens at first. Like, don't have any expectations, don't necessarily ask questions. Just see if you can feel any energy transfer, like pressure or tingling or like a magnetic pull. I mean, focus on those first. And then if you feel like you can open up or be, I guess, become a little bit deeper in your connection, go ahead and ask a question and see what comes up and just and keep it simple. Like, what is your name? How are you today? Keep it really simple and just and let things flow in. But it does take a little bit of practice.
Yeah, so cool. Do you find that having physical contact with the tree is helpful or necessary, or do you just kind of stand next to the tree?
Oh, what a wonderful question. Ah, it's actually funny because so many people say that they're tree huggers or label me as a tree hugger. And I'm like, I actually hardly ever touch the trees I work with. So I love this question so much because when I connect in, and the way that I teach most of my students is to actually not be physically in contact. I mean, you can, of course, you can go touch the tree and admire its beauty, but I think staying about 3, 4, 10 feet away from the trunk of the tree is actually better because, like, one, you're within the energy bubble of the tree. And if we ground our energy into our Earth Star chakra, which is about like 6 to 24 inches down below, that's where you want to be grounding your energy because you're tapping in to the network below. So that's point of contact one is tap into that space before the tree, actually physically in front of you, and then send heart, love, energy towards the tree. And just kind of sit in the space, sit in their energy, and know that you're going to be connected even if nothing happens. That's what I always recommend is just don't get up in their space and get too involved. Just be, just be with them.
Yeah, no, that's good to know. That would not have been what I would have guessed. So I love that piece of advice for people to try. I think that's so cool. And you mentioned heart connection. I've noticed
Mhm.
that you've been talking about that a little bit more through your videos. So, what is the importance of, utilizing your heart or coming from your heart when it comes to communicating with animals or trees or nature?
Yeah, well, there's a lot of reasons to kind of feel into your heart space. I mean, number one, we are so busy. Our minds are constantly kind of in a cycle, a loop. There's so much clutter in our minds that to even begin to connect with anything is almost impossible. When I always kind of like to use a full closet kind of analogy, it's like you literally cannot stuff anything else into your mind or into a full closet. So when we intentionally bring our awareness down into our heart space, it automatically clears that space in our mind to receive information or be available to notice other sensations within the body that are messages. But also, our heart center is its own intelligence. It's not secondary to the mind. It actually receives external stimuli first through the electromagnetic field, which is like 3 to 4 feet external. It reaches out 3 to 4 feet from our body. And that electromagnetic space will receive energy and begin to translate it first. And then we'll shoot up into the mind. If anybody is interested in going down a rabbit hole, the HeartMath Institute has wonderful research on this. But so I always say lean in with your heart because that's like your first brain. I call it my first brain because that's where you are. And so when we're working with trees or animals, if we're in our heart center, number one, that is like the pocket of love, of empathy, of emotion. I mean, it has all of the wonderful things there. And when we radiate love and gratitude towards anything, the other beings on the other or receiving end of that are going to feel that and be more inclined to communicate with us and connect in. So when I say work with your heart, I mean, number one, it will help you clear your mind. And two, if you go into that space of gratitude and love, it amplifies that power, that energy that's radiating outwards and touches everything around you and increasing your vibration, increasing their vibration, and creating that beautiful heart connection.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, I love that. That's really cool. And I didn't know that about the electromagnetic field. So that's really cool. Thank you for letting me know that. And I think especially for spiritual creators like on social media and talking about being, caught up in your head rather than your heart, I sometimes struggle with every message that I get. I'm like, okay, how can I share this? How can I give this with people? And it comes from pure intentions of like wanting to help people and raise their consciousness and awaken them. But it's sometimes I just feel like I'm getting caught up in that world instead of just like staying grounded and receiving the messages just for me and then being like, okay, which ones actually apply to the collective? Which ones can I just keep for myself? Is that something that you ever go through, and how do you balance that?
Every day. Yeah, every day. It's complex, especially in a world that is moving through a very awkward transition. There's people that are kind of understanding it. Maybe there's a little bit more. There's people that just really aren't. And so to be in a public space and just share these beautifully deep channeled messages from all of these different beings is terrifying sometimes. It's like, how is this going to be received?
Mhm.
Is this something that the greater good needs to receive, or should I just hold on to it? I mean, I have over 500 pages of channeled messages. I've been doing this for a while. And it's just like it took me a long time to just be able to be like, yes, I can't hold judgment of what I share because I'm the channel, right? It's not for me to decide what is and is not shared when I set the intention of what messages do I need to share today for the greater good or for my community. So when I'm kind of setting up that space, I make a very clear intention. And if I feel like my channeling isn't completely clear, I won't share it because, we get in our own way. And if the messages are too deep, sometimes I'm like, I just don't know. And so I do my best to just see which ones are going to be helpful, I guess, for the most part, and enlightening for others without, causing too much tension, because it's hard to just cover the spectrum when there's so many people in that public space. But yes, it's a complicated decision every single day, which messages to share and which ones not to.
Yeah. Yeah. And I I receive some of my most profound messages when I'm in nature. And so even that there's a battle of like trying to stay present in the moment versus thinking like, okay, how am I going to get this out to other people? It's like
Mhm.
just stay in the moment, receive it now, and then decide later. It's like something that needs to go out. But I find myself like whenever I receive messages, my wheels are always turning as to whether I should put this out and how I should put this out?
Yeah, yeah, I feel that very deeply too. It's sometimes you just have to say, this is for me,
Hmm.
and let it just be. And then kind of just separate yourself from what you want to share with what you don't, and just let it come through.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah. I think, and if someone's listening to this and they're like, okay, I feel you guys, but I'm not ready to talk to a tree, you know, or an animal. Maybe they're like not at that space, but they just want to kind of open themselves up to the idea that there are, these beings with different souls or essences around them. Other than kind of bringing that thought to your mind, do you have any advice for someone who just kind of wants to like wake up to that idea a little bit?
Yeah, I think the first thing to do is to learn more about your own intuitive abilities, because like our own inner awareness, our higher self is trying to communicate with us constantly. And so if you're not ready to talk to an animal or a tree, I totally get it. I would say start with yourself first and just see if you can really lean into your own inner knowing. And then when you're ready, expand out to whatever or wherever you're guided to. But I think going inward and kind of learning yourself first would be my first suggestion. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that makes a lot of sense. If to do that first and then kind of expand your consciousness. And, you mentioned the Earth Star chakra, which a lot of people don't know about. We talk a lot about like the seven chakras that are in our body, but not the one. And sometimes we'll talk about the ones that are above us, but almost no one talks about the Earth Star chakra, which is below your feet. And so for me, learning about that was huge. I almost got this message that like, yes, we decided to, our souls decided to come to Earth this time around. Um, but the earth specifically chose us. Like we kind of raised our hands, but then the earth was like, yes, I will allow you to inhabit my planet, and I know your name and I know everything about you and I love you. And I think if people are able to just kind of connect with the idea of their earth chakra and realize that you are always a part of the earth and grounded on the earth, it just really changes your perspective. And whenever I find myself getting like caught up in the everyday, you know, tizzy and stressors, I'm like, I'm a being that got chosen to be here by the earth. And I got chosen at the same time as all these other beings who are also so beautiful and loving. And isn't that just a miracle? You know, like I try to like take myself to that space, which is a new line of thinking for me. And I want to, I don't know how, but I want to like wake up other people to see that. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, totally. I totally see what you're saying. I love how you view that. Yes, we were chosen and we volunteered, and I agree that that space below our feet, even if you don't want to talk about like the whole chakra system, just 6 inches to 2 feet below our feet is like the sweet spot. And that is, I mean, I always think about how people go through grounding exercises and they anchor all the way down into the center of the earth. Well, that's great. It's a great exercise. It's a great meditation, but like Gaia doesn't need you to do that. She's told me not to do that because she wants us to just be at the surface where everything else is, where all of the living beings are. And that's how, and kind of going back to the whole soul essence, it's like that's how they know who they're connecting in with. If we're not tapped into that, if we're not aware that we're energetically connected to Gaia literally through our feet, we miss a huge portion of who we are and how we can help. So, uh, I could talk about that space all day.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
really
I
wish
mean, me
more people
too.
would talk about it. It's like
Yeah.
I had to Google. I came across that just kind of in, I think my guides told me about it actually a few years ago. And I was like, what is that? What is this Earth star? What? And it took me a long time to actually even Google it. I was like, does this even exist? And so it's like we need to bring awareness just into that space. So
Yes. People listening, if you do nothing else today, Google Earth Star Chakra.
yes, it's important.
Yeah, yeah. No, it's funny because I think meditating is very important and brings us a lot of good insights, but I'm also kind of waking up to this idea that like so many of the lessons that we're meant to learn in this life are through our physical bodies with our eyes open, interacting with the things around us. Like, if that wasn't the case, we wouldn't be here in the 3D. We would all just be in the 5D and it wouldn't matter and we could just go wherever. So, I like the idea of meditating and connecting with higher powers and everything like that. But for myself specifically, am trying to be really cognizant of like, my biggest lessons in life are going to come from the people around me, from the beings around me, from being physically in my body, being awake, you know, looking at the world around me. And I think that can sometimes be a space and an experience that gets overlooked in the spiritual realm because everybody's talking about astral travel and past lives, which are all amazing. But also, you're here in this present life right now. You know what I mean?
Yes, I totally know what you mean. And I have to admit, sometimes I prefer to astral travel and just like hang out in the ethers because it's like I don't have to have my body and I'm naturally kind of floaty anyways. And so to actually anchor into my body is extremely uncomfortable. And I know a lot of people are very similar, where they're like half in, half out all the time, just naturally without even knowing. But it's like when we actually bring ourselves and anchor into our body and kind of get comfortable there, it's like everything gets amplified anyways. And so you don't have to go fly around in the ethers and all these other realms because it's easier for you to tune into them while you're in your waking state, just milling around your kitchen, for example.
Yeah.
So you're right. I think the physicality of spirituality is definitely overlooked and needs to kind of come back into the space.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we're bringing it back.
Yes, we are. And it starts with trees.
Yes, absolutely. I was looking at some of the services that you offer, and I noticed that one is land and home clearing or healing. So can you explain to me what that is?
Yes, it's my favorite thing in the whole world right now. I work with, so kind of going back to the original, one of the original questions was, does everything have a spirit or a soul or an essence? Well, when I started to do energy healing and tuning into the land and the animals, they literally were like, no, you're going to be working with the land, we're going to be clearing it, and we're going to be teaching how to do all of this different stuff. So it's land healing, earth or land healing and space clearing, but I haven't announced this yet, but I call it like earth consciousness healing because not only do we just kind of clean and clear away any just stagnant energies within the space, but we tune into the spirit of the home. What does the home need? What does it want? What kind of healing does the spirit of the home need? And then sometimes there's like trauma held within the land that we can remove. We talk to the trees and see what their jobs are and what they want us to help heal. We talk, and I say we as in me and my guides and my client. It's usually a group effort. The elemental beings that live on the land, and so it's clearing a lot of the heavy trauma that kind of gets stuck in the land from our past, just recognizing it, removing it, and then seeing who lives on the land with you or in your home with you, kind of just depends on your property. What do they need to amplify the space, to keep it clean and clear and high vibrational? And then how can the client work with them themselves? So I'll just kind of give you an example of what this actually looks like. I had this client come in a few weeks ago. She bought a 5-acre property that was just covered with weeds. Everything was kind of run down. The house was older. It had been cared for by an elderly woman, I guess. I don't really know the history. And I started with the house and I thought, oh my gosh, this house reminds me of Mrs. Teapot from what is that, Beauty and the Beast? Just like this cute old, like motherly type spirit of the home. And I thought, this is amazing. What a lovely house to be in. And we found that this woman had fairies kind of in the back corner where a lot of the larger shrubs were. And she had some gnomes in the land. And her overarching questions were like, well, who lives here? What do we need to do? And this is kind of like my goal eventually. She wants to create this whole meditation space, this garden center, have bees, and this like wildflower trail. So she has like all of these wonderful plans, but her thought was, well, we have to get rid of the invasive weeds. How do they feel about that? It's like, okay, like let's ask what the land itself wants. Let's see what the fairies think about it. So all of these different beings that we live with kind of get to share their voice and what they see happening within the whole space that we all share, right? And it's so funny. The fairies were like, yay, we're getting bees. We're so excited. And so I plot out, what the land or the beings on the land want, where they want it. And I also look at trauma lines, like there's like earth energies, there's portals, chakras, high vibe, low vibe. So I kind of map all of that out just so people are aware of what's on their land. And then just share what the land wants if the people are trying to navigate adding things to the land or building on the land. We go about how they can create ceremony, offerings, work with the land in an appropriate manner without causing trauma. And that's like there's so much there. But essentially is just working in partnership with the land and the beings on the land. So in short, that's what that looks like. Yeah. It's
That's
pretty
so
cool.
cool. I think that's incredible. And, I my husband and I moved in the past year to a different town, also a new house, obviously. And we love our house so much and have had a really, fun time updating it. But it's kind of interesting. I had very few interactions with the past owner, but they were not great, And so I just, even though I'm sure, I know that a family was raised here. I'm sure they had a lot of great memories. But she was also a widow, so she lived here when her husband passed away, and it just feels like there's a little bit that's hanging on that like doesn't really want to, but it's like reluctant to leave. And I also want to be respectful of it because I'm like, this is the house's history. This was like experienced in this home, and I don't want to take away from that. But also, this is like our home and it's a new chapter for our family. So I guess I'm just kind of like struggling with like, do I just kind of let it dissipate over time? What would you, I guess if you were experiencing that, what would you think?
Yeah, I would say you should probably have a clearing done, especially with death. I mean, not all death has kind of that icky feel or vibration that it sticks behind, but those energies need to move out, move on. If it doesn't feel quite right, then it's not.
Mhm.
And so I would say, yes, that is the history of the house, and the history will always be there, but the energy and the trauma doesn't have to be. And it kind of reminds me of this one woman's house I did. She moved into an older house. I guess there was some heavy abuse to some children in the upper stairs, and she could just feel it every time she walked in the space. She's like, it feels really awful. And she's like, I've had people come and do energy healings and it doesn't leave, or they've done saging that's really popular too. And she's like, nothing really cleared it. And so it's like the way that I clear the trauma, for example, is going into basically that layer of energy and removing it physically, or physically in the energetic field, if that makes sense. Uh, it's like psychic surgery for energy removal in a space. That's like the only way I can really describe it. So it's very intentional. So just let me know if that doesn't go
Yeah.
away. We'll coordinate.
Okay. Does that take or I guess, do you have to be in the home to do that? Can you do it from afar? How do you do that when you're clearing someone's home?
Yeah, I do all of my land clearing remote.
Okay.
So I basically just set my intention, go into a deep trance, and it's like astral traveling, I guess. I go into that space energetically. So I'll be visiting your house, for example, energetically, and clearing anything away on that layer that doesn't belong.
Wow, that is so cool. That's incredible.
Yeah, I learned it by accident, I guess. It was just intuitive. It's like, oh, that's how you do this. Okay, let's do
Yeah. Yeah.
it.
Does that take a lot out of you when you do that?
It depends. Some of the higher vibration locations, when I come back into it, I'm almost jittery with extra energy. But unfortunately, I don't get a lot of those. I get a lot of really, really traumatic or nasty energies, in which case, yes, I come back and it's like I'm out for at least 2 days.
Yeah. I do have the ability to connect with past loved ones. So I was doing those readings for a while, and some of them were really light and just kind of loving messages, and others, especially like parents that lost kids at a young age, were like so heavy. And it just got to the point where I was like, for my own, health, I have to take a step back from this. So for the individuals who are kind of able to go to that space like yourself and obviously you have to recharge afterwards, but I just have a lot of respect for individuals who are able to do that because I don't think people realize how much it takes out of you when you are like tapping in to an energy that is really dark and sad?
Yes, I feel what you're saying 100% with those in spirit. I actually started animal communication because I had lost a lot of my animals and they kind of pushed me over into that space. a lot of my clients right up front were those who had lost their animal children, basically. Like they loved their animals just like children, and that the grief state is so hard to hold space for. I found that exact same thing. I actually almost quit because of it, because it's just takes so much out of you to hold that sacred space. And it's like, whew, that was heavy. I'm gonna go
Yeah.
take a 10-hour nap now.
Right. Yeah. You're like,
Yeah.
I'm done. No one talk to me for the rest of the day.
Yes, yes. I was like, I don't know if this is worth it. It's so hard.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Some people I think are better at certain aspects, definitely. One of my good friends is the best afterlife animal communicator. And it's like, all those people go to her, please.
Yeah.
She's great.
Okay.
She's great.
Referral system. Here you
Yeah.
go.
Yep.
I'll take the living ones, please. And I saw there are other few other services that you offered that I thought were really cool. So if you don't mind, I'd just love to kind of give you the floor to describe some of the other things that you offer and some of the other work that you do.
Sure. So yes, I offer animal communication sessions and energy healing for our loved ones. But those sessions are only available, every other month or so, because currently right now I'm creating workshops and kind of amplifying what I have already taught in the past. And so I'm currently creating and offering a 9-week animal communication program that starts in March, and I will have another round of it come probably September, October. So I'm really excited to be offering that to teach people how to communicate with their animals. I also offer a monthly land healing meditation and collective, and it's totally free. Just come hang out or sign up and get the recordings. It's kind of an intuitive where it's like intuitively pulled from where we target or what we heal. So we've done the Greater Yellowstone ecosystem was, I think, one of our last ones, and it was just so cool that the energy there is just amazing. This next month, we are going to be working with our own space, so you should actually join because, yeah, we're going to be just working with our own space through the meditation and cleaning and clearing anything that doesn't belong. So that's really cool. If you can't come live, there's always a recording, and people get to share about their experiences, which is like the best part. And I think that's coming up on the 17th. So it's the third Saturday of every month. And yeah, we talked about the land healing. And yeah, that's pretty much the gist of what I'm offering right now. So
Amazing. Yeah, I'm putting that on my calendar. I want to join for sure. That sounds
yeah, oh,
awesome.
very cool. We'd love to have you. They're so much fun.
Yeah, so cool. And this is such a random question that has nothing to do with anything that we've talked about, but ever since I like saw your video, I've just been wondering. So for those of you who are listening, we both have red hair, and I was just curious if you feel like there's any connection between you having red hair and your ability to do what you do. And it's okay if the answer is no. I'm just curious.
I think that's a great question. I wonder why I have red hair all the time. I'm the only one in my family, so it's
Me
like,
too.
what? Oh, I love that. It's so weird. You know what? I have to say that my red hair, because I also kind of fall into that belief system of we design how we look before we incarnate. So I'm like, why would I have red hair, right? Why would I need to have that in my life? Well, since I started talking to all these different beings, I've realized that my ancestral lineage comes through me very strongly. And it took me a while to figure that out, but obviously my ancestors are Irish and Scottish. And so when I was kind of in that space of nothing is making sense, I don't even know who to ask or what to ask, I kind of just started following my lineage. And I thought, oh my gosh, everything's starting to fall into place. So I looked into Celtic shamanism, druidry, and all the things. So I think on some level that my red hair was intentional, at least for me, so I could like figure out what I'm supposed to figure out. But I do find that redheads, uh, I think they're a little bit more magical. I'm just going to say it. I think there's something there.
Yeah, yeah, and I love that. I also have Irish roots and have looked at like Celtic
Mhm.
paganism and a lot of it resonates. So
Mhm.
I think that makes a lot of sense. And for me, I'm not saying this is for everybody, but for me personally, I get the sense that I've also had red hair in a past life. And you know how they used to like, I don't know if you burn redheads because they thought that they were witches.
Yep.
And I think I was a redheaded witch in a past life, and it wasn't safe to be that. And I think that's why it's taken 29 years for me to come online to the abilities that I have and like really wake up to it, because I didn't feel like it was safe
Mhm.
for, past life trauma. So that's my theory, but yeah.
I totally get it. Yeah, I have done some past life work also where I've actually seen like me in this hooded cloak and secret by a cauldron. I'm like, oh my God, I was totally a witch.
Yeah.
And it's funny that you say the whole they burned at the stake because myself and many other people that I know that are actually also redheads, now that I think about it, we've all been terrified of our houses burning down ever since we can remember. And it's like, obviously, that's trauma from a past life. It has to be because there's no
Yes.
reason for so many of us to have that same fear.
Yeah, I haven't thought about that as much as I've grown older, but when I was a kid, I was so adamant about my family having a like fire escape plan. I was like, we need those little ladders that come out of our windows. My parents were like, what did they tell you at school that freaked you out this much? But I was like, we need a plan. So that makes a lot of sense too.
Yeah, that makes so much sense. I was the same way. I used to go over to sleepovers and just cry and cry and cry because I was like, what if my house burns down and I'm not there? I mean, it was so deep. I mean, and so many people have the same fear,
Yeah.
burning, drowning, all these different things. It's just there's a lot of past life trauma with the burning of the witches.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, thank you for indulging me on that random question. I have yet to talk to another redhead about this, so I just had to put it out there.
Loved it. Great question.
I have a few last little questions for you, but is there anything else that we haven't covered that you wanted to chat about today?
I don't think so. I think we
Okay.
covered quite a bit.
Yeah, we did. I had a lot of questions, so thank you.
Yeah, of course.
Okay, few last little questions. If you could tell your younger self one thing, what would it be?
Hmm. Yes, I would go to my 6-year-old self and say, you're completely on point. Don't give up on yourself. Ooh, that's gonna make me cry. That's when I was so tuned in and I knew the world around me, and there was no filtering or judgment. I love that version of myself. I wish she would have stayed present a lot longer. So now I'm all emotional, but
Yeah.
I can just feel
Yeah.
her too. It's like tapping into that inner child. She's like just so happy that it's like I've come back into that space and I have given her permission to accept who she is. Yeah.
Yeah. So beautiful. I love that so much. What is one thing that you have done for yourself recently that you are grateful to yourself for?
Oh, setting stronger boundaries. I am definitely bad at boundaries. And recently, I have made it a point to structure myself and not be as pushed around by just expectations or even clients sometimes. And that's really helped my energy and it helps me stay strong. So I think that that's something everybody should learn how to do, even though it's really hard.
Amen.
Yeah.
Amen to that.
Hmm.
What is one area where you're being a little bit too hard on yourself and you want to give yourself some grace?
Yeah, I'm a perfectionist. Um, and I have a ton of responsibilities. Like, not only do I have my own business, I have a pile of animals that I care for. They're all rescues, and I have my family here, and it's just like if I look around and it just looks like a tornado has gone through my house, my property constantly. And it's like, you know what? I just gotta let things go. Like the dishes are gonna have to just not be complete right now. There's gonna be laundry. Like I can't be perfect all the time. And so kind of just working with those expectations, I think is something that I need to work harder on.
Yeah, absolutely. I get that so much. In your darkest hour, what keeps you going?
Oh, God, these are great questions. In my darkest hour, I feel like I just went through one of those moments. Knowing the truth in my heart and knowing that it's all going to be okay. And just, I have to keep going, even if it's just half a step forward, because what I do every single day is so important, not only to me, I mean, so many other people. And sometimes we get stuck in that space of fear, or other people's judgment kind of clouds us, or, certain things can just take us down. And it's like, no, I have to stay strong here. I know what I'm doing makes a difference. And it's like the fire in my soul just kind of goes down, and then it's like, no, let's fight back, and it kind of just like blows up. It's like, okay, we just got to remember why we're here and the overarching mission, because it's so important.
Yeah, absolutely. That's beautiful. Last question. If you could give one piece of advice or words of encouragement to someone who's just starting out on their spiritual journey, what would it be?
Hmm. Yeah, just starting out. I would say don't believe everything you listen to or hear in the spiritual community. Always listen to your own internal truth. Um, and if you're kind of stepping out into that space of learning your own skills, don't give up on yourself. It can be really hard, but keep going, keep going, keep going. And eventually you'll kind of break through that first barrier, and it's like the whole world will open up for you. So don't give up on yourself, and always go within for your truth.
Oh, cool. I love that so much. Well, Kara, this has been absolutely incredible. Thank you so much for sharing your light, your wisdom, and your love with me today. I appreciate it so much.
Thank you so much for having me. What a pleasure.
That wraps things up for this episode of Guided Souls. Thank you so much for being here with me today. And thank you again to Kara for sharing so much wonderful wisdom and light with us. Make sure that you go check her out at deep.root.connections on TikTok and Instagram, and you can check out the link in the show notes to see all of the different things that she's up to and the different services that she offers. Until next time, keep going. You're doing amazing, and I love you.